Hello friends, James Corbett here with your thought for the day for August 5th, 2015, and here we go again. Well, earlier today, I received this tweet from @True217 about British SAS Special Forces dressed up as ISIS rebels fighting Assad in Syria. Which leads to this article from Global Research by Stephen Lendman, which notes that more than 120 members belonging to the elite regiment, the SAS, the British Special Forces, are currently in the war-torn country, covertly dressed in black and flying ISIS flags, engaged in what's called Operation Shader, attacking Syrian targets on the pretext of combating ISIS. Yes, the British Special Forces are now dressing up, or at least are now admittedly dressing up as ISIS and patrolling around looking for soft targets to attack in Syria. One presumes targets against the Syrian government more so than against ISIS, which of course is just being used as the sword that is allowing the context and the pretext for the invasion that is happening in slow motion and has been for several years there in Syria. Well, what could possibly go wrong? The British Special Forces dressing up as ISIS in order to do their operations. Well, we could take the old blowback routine, quote unquote. Blowback, yes, like when the US was involved in training the rebels, quote unquote, who went on to, wouldn't you know it, who could have thought it, they went on to become ISIS fighters. So they were running a secret base in Jordan that just happened to train a bunch of rebels that actually were more radical than people expected. Oh my god. So this is the kind of thing that obviously goes quote-unquote wrong all the time, if you want to believe that this was somehow unforeseeable and unforeseen by the people running camps like that. But no, how about the bumbling, boobish incompetence of the SAS? Let's not forget their debacle back in Libya in 2011 when the team of SAS soldiers was helicoptered into Benghazi to mix in with the rebels in Libya and to basically help out the cause there, trying to overthrow Gaddafi for the international banksters. And yes, they forgot to tell the rebels they were coming, so the rebels thought they were under attack and took the entire SAS team hostage. They took them into custody and held them there until ultimately a diplomat had to get on, came with a video message to please let our forces go, and that was broadcast on national TV in Libya. The whole sordid tale of that ridiculous debacle is up here, but there you go. There's the proud British Special Forces for you. But it's actually much, 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 much worse than that, because it's not incompetence, it's not blowback. I have the impression that the SAS dressing up as ISIS are going to be used to actually commit attacks that will be blamed on ISIS in order to once again allow the context and the pretext for the full-on invasion of Syria, which is already shaping up. For example, let's turn back to Iraq. Back in 2005, you might remember this story that popped up in September of that year. British Special Forces caught dressed as Arab terrorists, and this goes on to say that British soldiers have been caught posing as Arabs and shooting Iraqis in the occupied city of Basra in southern Iraq. A group of them was caught yesterday by Iraqi police. They were driving an Iraqi car, wearing Arab clothing, and carrying weapons and explosives. The Iraqi police were patrolling the area looking for suspected terrorists or insurgents, and they noted that the men were acting suspiciously. Suddenly, without warning, the suspicious men started shooting at people, but the new Iraqi security forces managed to capture some of them before they could escape. Obviously, if these men had not been caught, the mass media would now be reporting the incident as just another attempt by evil terrorists to create civil war in Iraq. And that was followed up by a brazen attack on the Iraqi government's own prison in Basra to free these captured British Special Forces operatives. And that story in itself is just incredible. They used a tank to storm and ultimately ended up freeing 127 of the prisoners there at the jail. Obviously, the Iraqi government pretty pissed off about it, but what are they going to do? It was ultimately, Britain and America's country by that point, and perhaps they were serving other interests in that war, like the interests, obviously, for Greater Israel and the Zionist plan for the Middle East. going back to the Oded Yonon plan in the 1980s, but of course there have been various variations of this plan over the past few decades. But of course this plan specifically called for breaking up Syria and Iraq through internal violence and sectarian tensions in order to create this promised land of the greater Israel. And, well, it's all coming true, isn't it? Certainly it's happened in Iraq, where now the formal proposal is actually on the table to split the country into the 3 sectarian sections that have been aimed at since the occupation of that country over a decade ago now, and which has been proceeding apace because of incidents, well, exactly like this one, except in this one, the false flag was caught in the act, and the people perpetrating it were caught in the act, so they couldn't pretend that it was an actual civil war that was happening. They had to admit, yes, well, okay, this was British forces that were pretending to be Arabs. Well, think of all the times that they didn't get caught in the act, and how many of the spectacular terror events that stoked and flamed the fires of tension in Iraq during those years of heated battle, and continuing through to the present day, were actually committed by British forces or others. And what do you think is going to be used for putting special forces in Syria dressed up as ISIS rebels? Do you think they're just there to map out the terrain and look for some targets for the Army and Air Force to target? Or do you think they're actually there to stir up the tensions and commit terror attacks? Well, gentle listener, viewer, I leave it in your hands to come up with your own conclusions. Of course, I will put the links to all of these articles in the show notes for this video. Please use these resources and start looking into this issue. And let's see what else we can dig up about Operation Shader. My thanks to @True217 for sending this my way. Once again, I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.